Hi guys, this is my drawing of a raven that I did. It is framed. Unfortunately, picking up a bunch of reflections, it's hard to get a good video of it. But you can get like non-glare glass, but I don't like it because non-glare glass is basically like etched to prevent the reflections, and it gets rid of a lot of the detail when you do that. But the drawing is Hinge, what's it called? Hinge floated, which means that the drawing itself is hanging on the outside of a piece of mat board, versus the mat board being cut with a big hole and then the drawing put on the inside. And the reason I did this is because it's handmade paper, and I wanted to show off the edges of the paper. So let's get a little bit closer and I'll show you. See the handmade paper. So anyway, I love it myself, so I don't like to cover it up. It's not even, so you have to do it a lot by eye to get it right, but yeah. So I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so we're going to get this drawing framed. The first thing I did was cut the mat board piece. Now, when you're cutting mat board, the best thing to use is a T-square and a very sharp razor blade. So if you've got a box cutter that you're going to use, make sure you put a brand new razor blade in it, because this outer coating on the mat board is very easy to ruin, to tear. So you want to do it very slowly, very carefully, with a very sharp knife. And of course, it's acid-free mat board. Would not use anything else. And I made sure that the mat board fit perfectly into the frame that I got. Now, the frame that I got is just a very simple, very high quality wooden frame. And you don't want to use a fancy frame on a drawing, because the frame will overpower the drawing to where when you look at the drawing, all you'll see is a frame. So you want to use a very simple frame. Now, this kind of has to be eyeballed quite a bit because it's on handmade paper and the edges are not even. And I'm sure it's not square. If I were to go from corner to corner and corner to corner, or this way, and keep measuring it across, it's not going to be even. It's not going to be square. So you kind of got to use your eyeball on this, because your eyes work better than measuring in this case. And I want to frame it to where the sides are basically even and the top is either even with the sides, or in this case I'm going to do it slightly deeper than the top, because I've got quite a bit of room on the bottom. You always have more room on the bottom. It's called weighting it. You want it weighted on the bottom, so you want a little bit more room on the bottom than on the sides and top, because if you had it all exactly even, when you look at it, it gives the optical illusion that there's not as much room on the bottom. So you always give a little bit more room on the bottom to weight it. So what I'm going to do is kind of eyeball where to put it, and then measure the sides and the top and see what kind of space I have. And approximately, because like I say, it's not square. A lot of times I will back the handmade paper with a piece of acid-free paper on the back of it, but I'm not going to in this case, because if I put a white piece of paper underneath, it blends in. The paper's slightly see-through, so if you put white underneath it, all this beautiful parchment effect on the paper will like blend in with each other and it won't show as much, and I really want it to show in this particular drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and measure, and then I'll show you what I do next. Okay, so I've got it measured, and what I'm going to end up with is approximately 2.5 inches on each side and 2 3/4 inches on the top. So what I want to do is hang this on the mat board as opposed to cutting the mat board and fitting it inside of it, because I want the beautiful edges of the handmade paper to show. So I'm going to use what's called hinge framing, or hinge hanging, or something on that order. And what I'm going to do is, okay, so I know the measurements down, and I'm going to put 2 pieces to hang it, 2 pieces of tape, 1 on each corner. So I will measure inside and go an extra 1/2 inch, and then down from the top and an extra 1/2 inch, and I'll put slits in the mat board, not in the drawing, but in the mat board, to where I can fit some tape through. The tape that I'm going to use is a hinging paper tape, and it is 100% acid free. Kind of, it might show slightly through the paper, but not likely very much, because the fact it's the same color as the paper and it's pretty see-through. And so that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the mat board, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do next. And also, again, when I cut, I'm just going to cut little slits in the mat board, and I'm going to use a super sharp razor blade. Okay, so I'm going to measure in 3 inches from the side. I'm going to mark it with a piece with a white charcoal pencil, which will show up on this, and I can wipe it off easy, but I'm also going to make sure that I'm well inside of where the drawing's going to hang, so that it will not be out in the open, because you don't want any marks on the mat board at all showing. Okay, so I'm going to go about 3 inches from each side, which is 1/2 inch inside of where the outside the drawing's going to be. I'm going to put a little mark there and go about 1.25 inches. On the other side, about 3 inches and about 1.25 inches. Okay, then down from the top. Down from the top was 2 3/4, so we want 1/2 inch added onto that. It's going to make it about 3 1/4 inches. Oh, and I kind of went a little bit too high up, but that's okay, because it's still not going to show. So we're going 1, 2, 3, about 3 1/4. And 1, 2, 3 1/4 is about there. Okay, so I'll make my new little lines, and then I'll show you what we got. Okay, so I've cut 2 pieces of hinging tape, about 2.5 inches long, and I'm going to fit them into the slots to where there's a little bit, maybe 1/2 inch sticking out, and the rest of it's on the back. This particular hinging tape, some of it doesn't, but this particular one has like the glue on one side, so I want to make sure I have the glue up on this side, and then I'll show you what I do on the back. So I think this will show. See how there's like a T holding it into place? And that is acid-free tape. Anytime you do anything with framing artwork, use acid-free tape made especially for framing artwork, because if you just grab some off the shelf at Wally World or something, it likely is going to have acid in the glue, which will eventually corrode and ruin the paper everywhere it touches. So always, always use acid-free. Okay, so I've got the pieces of tape. It's taped on the back so it doesn't slide or move. And sometimes I would, if I was framing it with handmade paper with a piece of paper mounted on the back, I would bring this down lower and do another T. But I'm not going to use that paper on the back. So I want just as little as possible to still hold it firmly. And what you do is very, very lightly you get this wet. Not wet, I just use a paintbrush and I'm putting a little bit of water on it. You don't want it soaked. You just want to activate the adhesive that's on this, on the back of this paper. And you don't want it soaked because you don't want to get the drawing damp at all when you stick the drawing on it. You just want to have it activated. And now I'm not going to be able to show this part because it's going to take two hands, but I'm going to very carefully position the drawing on the mat board. Okay, so I've got the drawing in place on the mat board, and I just took my hand and like applied pressure where the damp tape is. Got the corners good and tight. And now this kind of is going to show through now. So now we've got the drawing is hanging on the mat board nice and firm, hangs nice and straight. If it didn't hang straight, I would probably do like one on the bottom or halfway down. But the paper's pretty flat because I had it pressing while I was ordering stuff to do the framing inside of a sketch pad with some weight on it to keep, just so that it pressed it really nice and flat so it'd frame easily. So okay, so I'll show you how I do the frame real quick. So I picked up the glass for the frame today. So I'm going to finish putting it together, but I'm not going to film the whole thing because this video is already a little bit long. But I'll kind of go over a few of the key points. First thing is that because we did not cut the mat like you do when you traditionally frame a drawing, the mat is cut and the drawing attached to the back, and then when you put it in the glass, the mat is hitting the glass, not the drawing. Now, the way that we floated it, this drawing, if I was going to just drop it into the frame, the drawing itself would be against the glass. And you don't want that because it pick up condensation if there was any, and all that kind of stuff. You want the drawing, you want airspace between the drawing and the glass. So what we're going to do is use what's called a spacer. This is a spacer. It is just a piece of plastic about 1/4 inch thick, kind of fly. And there's tape on the back. When you peel the tape back, that side is sticky. And you cut it to fit into the frame. So you would put it against the glass, like tight up against the wall, so that from the front it doesn't show at all. You cut 4 pieces to fit in, to where it's all like up against the glass. See if I can show it. It's right there. You put it right up against the edge, and this creates a space, which is probably why it's called a spacer. And then you put the mat and the drawing on top of that. Now, because this frame has a fairly deep rabbet, the rabbet is the space right here on the edge of the frame in between the frame to the top. That's called the rabbet. This is a custom-made frame. It has a fairly deep rabbet. It actually is deep enough that you could use it for an oil painting. But because the rabbet's so deep, I'm probably going to put, the last layer is going to be cardboard. You do not want the cardboard to be touching the mat or the drawing or anything, So when I put it together, it's going to be the spacers, and then the matted drawing, and then a piece of acid-free backing board, and then probably a layer of cardboard. And you got to put that acid-free mounting board in there so that the cardboard never touches anything, because cardboard is not acid-free. And after years, it will start turning whatever it's touching yellow. So, and you don't want that to be the drawing or the mat board. So, that's why we do that. And the only other tip I'll give you before I finish this video up and get this put together is, when you, of course, you want to clean the glass really good before you put it in there, but you're still going to end up with fingerprints and stuff on it. So clean it really good before you put the drawing in there, because you don't want to get it all framed and turn it around and see a piece of white dust on it. That's just not good. And one of the things that I've learned over the years to make sure there's absolutely not a speck of dust inside of it is I take a canned air like you use for a computer, and when I'm done cleaning the glass, I'll kind of start in one corner and spray it with air to get rid of any dust that might be sitting there, or any little tiny flecks of paper towel dust or whatever. So I think that's about it. So if you have any questions, just put them down in the comments. And if you've made it this far in the video, you're a very brave person. Thank you very much. And I'll talk to you guys later, and have a great day.